Hello, hello. I hope you're doing awesome today. All right, so I'm going to be talking about ovulation and fertility charting and really how to use fertility charting to know about ovulation, what to do if you're not, what are the causes of not ovulating. So thank you all for joining me. My name is Heather Rodriguez. I'm a natural fertility specialist. I help women who want to support their hormones naturally, prepare for pregnancy, overcome fertility issues, and all of that. Very into supporting and empowering women. Okay, so fertility charting and ovulation. So first of all, confirming ovulation is one of the most important steps someone can take, right, when they're trying to get pregnant. So if you've been trying to get pregnant for a period of time, and you were to reach out to me and say, I'm not sure where to start, what should I do? The first thing I would say is to begin fertility charting and to confirm whether or not you're ovulating. Okay, so that will tell us so much. So a lot of women who might reach out who are 40 plus, first thing I ask, do you know if you are still ovulating? 45, and older, they will ask, do you think I can still get pregnant? My first question is always, are you still ovulating? Okay, so the best way to do that is to just like I've just been driving all morning. That's why I wasn't on at 10. So I just got to take a second to get grounded. Okay. So that's one of the first questions I will always ask because that will say a lot. Now, a lot of times when I ask whether or not someone is tracking their fertility, if they know they're ovulating, they say, yes, I'm taking OPK tests. So I know whether or not I'm ovulating. And so one of the biggest misconceptions I see out there when it comes to confirming ovulation and to kind of knowing the beginning place for your fertility is OPK tests do not confirm ovulation. That's not what they do. What they are going to tell you is when your fertile time is, when your fertile period time might be, when you're going into that fertile mode. So you want to have baby making sex and all of that. But OPK tests do not confirm that you have ovulated. Okay, so don't go by those alone. The other thing that's really frustrating with OPK tests is that they have to be, the line has to be darker than the baseline. Like the line that's always there, the one that's your test result needs to be darker. So people get really confused about this. So because they're different than pregnancy tests, a faint line is not a correct line. So I personally just do not like OPK tests. I know some people are fine with them, but that's not my jam. My jam is fertility charting. So on a fertility chart, when you're tracking every single day, what a fertility chart is, you're taking your temperature every day. You take it under your tongue with a digital basal thermometer. This is one that will have a decimal point on it. So you can have your temperature down to the decimal. So 98.3, 97.6, 94 point, well, no one would ever be 94.2. That would be horrible. Anyways, but you know what I'm saying, 98.7 and so on. You need that decimal because your temperature can change only in very small amounts when you're charting. And so you're charting your temperature every day and you're starting to look at the pattern. Now, one of the things that you can tell is when and whether or not you've ovulated. So when ovulation happens, there will be a dip and then there'll be a rise as progesterone production begins. And so this is what one of the many things we're looking for in the chart to kind of see where you're at with your reproductive health and your fertility health is whether or not you're ovulating. Okay, so that's like kind of the third area that I really look at. So this is a great free way to do that. Now, you have the chart and you're either ovulating or you're not. Now, there's so much that we can learn from this and from this area of ovulation or this area of the chart. So the first thing is we know whether or not you're ovulating. If you are ovulating, for some women, they might actually determine they're ovulating early. That's a thing. I thought all I had to do was to ovulate, right? So ovulating early can be a thing. Someone's asking, is there a certain time of day when you should take your temperature? Thank you for asking that. That's a fantastic question. You need to take your temperature first thing in the morning before you get up out of bed, before you start moving around. Don't be going over and cuddling with your partner and then taking your temperature. It's the first thing you have to do when you wake up. Very important. Awesome question. Thank you for asking that. And it should be the same time every day. Okay, so we've charted and we've seen ovulation. So some women do determine that they ovulate early, and now that's a whole other topic. So that's a whole category that can happen. And so by early, I mean, you might have a 28-day cycle and you're ovulating on day 8 or 9. Okay, so that could be a thing. Some women will find out that they're ovulating and then they get their period 8 days later. So that's a whole thing, right? That's a little phase defect. So that's information. So ovulation, fantastic. but what's happening around it. The other thing that women might find is that they actually are not ovulating. Their charts will end up with kind of like this like very uneventful line, you know, it goes a little bit up and down, but not dramatic. Like when you're looking at a chart when ovulations occurred, it is most of the time very clear that it has occurred. So some of the reasons that you may not ovulate, there's a lot of different reasons. There's not just one. It's not just like, oh, this hormone's out of whack, right? Just like having a missing period, there's a lot of different reasons someone might have a missing period. Same thing with ovulation. So stress is something that can really have an effect on your ovulation pattern. It can affect the body and your hormones because the precursors to the hormones for our reproductive hormones are the same ingredients the body's using to produce stress hormones. That's one aspect of it. So if you're under a lot of stress constantly, like you're just in this constant state of fight or flight, the body is going to redirect its resources to producing stress hormones to get you ready to run away from that tiger. Our bodies are still in a prehistoric phase of survival when we may not be. So when we have stress, it has that same effect. In particular, it really affects luteinizing hormone. And this can also be affected by the pituitary gland. So the endocrine system could be involved. The stress pulls that in. So doing something to help to reduce stress, especially if sometimes women will reach out and they'll say, I've been regularly ovulating for a while and this month I didn't ovulate. What happened? Well, you know, I don't really worry until something becomes a pattern, right? But were you stressed out? Did something stressful happen in your life recently? You know, a lot of times that can be directed to it. The next reason someone might not be ovulating is because of lack of sleep. So sleep has a big effect on hormone production. It can cause follicle stimulating hormone levels to drop, and this will affect the ability for the body to ovulate and to release an egg. FSH levels tend to be highest right before ovulation. So if you're having trouble sleeping, that's definitely something to work on. If you're experiencing a lot of stress and a lot of sleep, reach out to me. I have some protocols that have worked wonders for me because I experienced stress and sleep issues as well but now I have these things that I use that are fantastic. All right, so lack of sleep. The other factor that can definitely affect ovulation will be polycystic ovary syndrome. And anyone who has that knows this already. This isn't news to you, but just know that this is 75% of cases that have been tracked. This tends to be the reason that someone is not ovulating regularly. And this is caused from insulin resistance, higher androgen levels, and this can really affect the menstrual cycle and the ability to ovulate. Lots of solutions for that. I've worked with many women who have been able to manage it and get pregnant despite. It does take time to see results with that, but yes. All right, and then the next is going to be perimenopause. So some women will begin to stop having regular ovulation, like they might go to every other month or every couple of months because they're in perimenopause. So this is the beginning of the shift of the hormones, and this is one of the ways that you begin to see that. So this I also love fertility charting for because you can really watch your hormones and see what they're doing, how they're progressing and all of that. So that can be it as well. Very low body weight can be a factor. This affects having a period. This affects being able to ovulate, affects a lot of different things. This is a little bit more on the, not rare side, but it's not as frequent as some of these other issues that I do see. But women with very, very low fat could impact reproductive hormones, and then all of that will follow. And then you just begin to work on your nutrition if you have like history of eating disorders and those types of things. If you've also like recently gained or lost a lot of weight, this can really cause shock to the system, and that can affect hormones. Again, not as common, but just something to keep in mind. Another thing is if you have recently stopped birth control, and like some women will reach out, they just stopped birth control and they're like, it's been 1 month since I've been off birth control, I'm not pregnant yet. Okay. That doesn't generally happen for most people. It happens for some, but that's normal. Or I'm not ovulating. I stopped birth control. I'm not ovulating. Another one might be, I gave birth 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and I haven't gotten my cycle back, or I'm not ovulating yet. Or I gave birth 6 months ago. I don't have my cycle back yet, and I'm not ovulating. All right. So those are definitely going to be hormonally affected. And then if you've had a recent miscarriage, for some women, it can take some time for the cycle to get back on track and for ovulation to begin occurring again. All right, so these are all going to be things that kind of take time for the hormones to get back on track. There are things you can do to help support that, but some of that does have to be patience. And then another factor is breastfeeding. So nursing increases prolactin levels in the body, and naturally prolactin levels will inhibit ovulation. That's like a direct effect of prolactin. So if you are breastfeeding, and especially on demand, and you are wanting to get pregnant again, it could take some time for you to get your cycle back on track because of those prolactin levels. So you might have to wait until you're ready to wean if that is affecting your fertility. It does for a lot of women. And it's not that it's affecting their fertility, it's just how our bodies are built. Because generally, if we still have a child who's breastfeeding, then we're back to caveman days. We wouldn't maybe have the resources or whatever we need to get pregnant again. So this is just part of how nature has built us to self-regulate. Another factor is premature. This list is long, right, guys? Another factor is premature ovarian failure. This is where hormonal changes can lead to irregular absent cycles and can be like an early beginning of menopause. So this is something that you would actually, if you think this is happening to you, this is generally something that you would know from blood work, not something that we can see from a chart. But there have been women that have been able to help support themselves and overcome this. And maybe it wasn't POF. I'm not sure, the ones that were able to overcome it. Pituitary and thyroid gland disorders. So I talk so much about the thyroid, and I talked earlier in this week about that because this is something I see so much of. 1 out of 8 women currently do have hypothyroidism or some type of thyroid imbalance that's affecting their fertility. Those are just the women that have actually worked with a doctor that believes in that and that knows what their thyroid levels should be and the most current numbers. So I know that number's got to be higher because a lot of women I speak with have not necessarily been getting the support or working with a doctor that is working with the current numbers. So fertility problems can be related to thyroid or pituitary dysfunction. This can be a cause of an ovulatory or when you're not ovulating. This is one of the reasons I talk about the endocrine system so much in the 5 pillars, because I feel this is a really ignored area of reproductive care is the endocrine system and the thyroid. And this is something that's definitely being affected by our environment. And then the next thing that you can do is what I really like to focus on is the whole picture though, right? So we're focusing on ovulation. If we're looking at the chart and we're able to tell whether or not it's happening, is the timing right? Is this an area we even need to be concerned of? When it is, I ask you to not hyper focus just on the ovulation. Because in order for ovulation to occur, there are so many different cascade of events that need to happen in order for ovulation to occur. And if all we focus on is, okay, how can I make ovulation happen? That's what Clomid does. Let's just force that. We aren't addressing, is it the thyroid? Is it the endocrine system? Could it be some of these other factors? Might there be PCOS? Might there be some of these factors that could actually affect my pregnancy when I do become pregnant? Okay. So that's why I still like to look at the bigger picture. So fertility charting is absolutely amazing for that. For a lot of women, also, there will be multiple things on the chart. This is very normal because of this cascade of events, because of how hormones work. It's generally not just like, oh, you're not ovulating and everything else in your chart is perfectly perfect and you don't have any night sweats and you don't have any this or that. Generally, there's going to be a small list of things. So that's one of the reasons I love the empowering tool of fertility chart. All right. So now what do you do about it? All of those things. So each one of those different categories, each one of those different areas does have a different approach. Way too much to go over on a quick video like this. But what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be doing a class on fertility charting 101 on Tuesday, August 24th. Let me just double check the date. Yep. August 24th, a Tuesday at 3 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. There is a link in my bio and on Instagram. I'll put a link on the video for, wow, there's some eagles right in front of my office. That's so cool. I'll put the link on YouTube and Facebook so you can register. So in that class, I'm going to be teaching you how to fertility chart. So it'll be fertility charting 101. I know some of you are experts on it and could teach this class, but it will be how to get started fertility charting, the tools you need. I'll give you a free chart, like a PDF that you can download, and I'll mention some tools you can use online to chart as well if you like to get a little bit geekier with it. How to fertility chart, and then we're going to talk about the different areas on the fertility chart and what that tells you. Because a lot of times with charting, we're really just looking at ovulation. We're looking for fertile time, which is awesome. But there's so many other things such as the current state of the thyroid, whether you're estrogen dominant, estrogen deficient, or healthy balanced estrogen, where your progesterone is, cycle length. All of these things are factors that lifestyle and supporting your natural health can have a positive effect on if we're seeing that's what needs to be worked on. So that's what I'll be covering during that class on how to chart, different things that you can learn from it. And then there will also be an invitation at the end of the class if you are getting into this charting and you're like, wow, this is great. I really want to be able to learn about my fertility, where I'm going to be helping to group coach for 3 months, 3 cycles of charting, you guys, so that you can continue to learn, have your charts looked at, that kind of thing. So you know what you're looking at and you know what to do. So if you're looking at your chart and it's expressing imbalance or needing support in a certain area, there will be protocols in there that you can then go to and help yourself with and begin to support yourself. There will also be an opportunity during that class for anyone who does want one-on-one fertility chart support from me. That will be another option at the end of class. I'll tell you how you can get that. All right, so link in the bio, link underneath the description on Facebook, Instagram. And also for any of you who want more information about, like maybe you know specifically what's happening already for your ovulation, you're like, this is exactly what's happening. Check out Natural Fertility Info. We have over 1,200 resources and guides to natural fertility. Our search function's incredible. I just had website designers come in and make it so that this is an encyclopedia for natural fertility. This is one of the biggest resource online that has guides and resources to things you can do naturally. So go check that out. If you do know specifically what's happening for you and you want to just get started right now on a plan or a guide, go ahead and check that out. naturalfertilityinfo.com. You can also check out my class at Natural Fertility, or not my class. I'm trying to read comments and talk at the same time. My shop, naturalfertilityshop.com. All right, so someone was asking if we can't make it to live class, can we order a pre-recorded class? So the replay will be available for 24 hours. So if you can't make it to that time, I totally understand. A lot of you are in other countries and time zones. Just go ahead and register anyways. The next morning, I send out a replay, which is live for 24 hours. So you can go ahead and watch that and get caught up. Anything to do to increase ovulation. So that will be covered. See, it depends on what the cause was. So a lot of the causes I talked about during this class. So really understanding what's happening and looking at the bigger picture is going to help to know how to do that. So for instance, if something is happening because of a nutritional deficiency or someone is really low in calories and fat, but we end up using something like Vitex or something to help support ovulation, it doesn't really fit because the cause is something totally different than needing to support the pituitary or support that kind of thing, prolactin levels, right? So really learning to listen to the body. That's why I'm such a big proponent of this over here's just this herb, here's just a supplement. It would be so much easier for me. I wouldn't have to work so much, but that's not what it's about for me. It's not about me like, okay, how much Vitex, can I sell? Because of course I sell Vitex. I sell the highest quality Vitex you could possibly get. My goal though for you is to understand what's happening so that you can really figure out the root cause. And it's not always just a product. Products definitely help. They help with biological support and changes in the body, but there's other factors that could be involved. If it's stress, like for instance, one of the causes could be stress, and we're not addressing that, then it's not going to change. So it's really important to know the reason why. So I like to take a step back and look at the bigger picture to determine what that is. This is amazing information. Awesome. I'm glad you found it so helpful. How much does your temp need to increase to confirm ovulation? So Nicole, it's not that it's a certain amount of temperature increase. So when you're fertility charting, you're putting your temperatures in and you'll connect all the dots of the temperatures. So if you're using an app like fertilityfriend.com, it will do it for you. Or if you're just using like a piece of paper, which is super simple, you just have pen and paper by your table, and you just put a dot for each temperature, and then you connect all the dots and you see this pattern. So it's not that this temperature rise has to be a certain amount of degrees. It's more of a pattern that I'm looking for rather than a specific temperature. So it'll be like the first part of the cycle, and then once ovulation happens, this dip occurs and then this rise, and this rise will continue because of what progesterone does in the body. The progesterone increases body temperature. So it's not a particular temperature. It's more of a pattern. We look at different patterns when it comes to the chart. All right. Tons of questions over here on YouTube. Let me see if any of these have to do with charting. Okay, some of these are way too complex to answer on a video. Someone's asking, is 26 days cycle, is that normal? So what can happen with a 26-day cycle is, for me, that does end up being on the shorter side of things, but I would still like to look at your chart to see how long is your luteal phase. Is there enough time for implantation to occur? Like once you kind of get below 27, 26 days, it's really good to see how much time you have in each of those phases to make sure that there's enough time for your follicles to mature and there's enough time for implantation to occur. So when we get on that shorter side, just want to see what's happening. You know, anything under 27, I'm not saying 26 is going to be too short, but that's when we start running into some things that could make it too short. Okay, awesome. All these other questions are on other topics. I appreciate all of your questions. You guys have a fantastic day. I will be on again tomorrow, and we will be wrapping up this topic about fertility charting. Have a great day.